The altar, looking from an Old Testament point of view or perspective, where persons used to offer sacrifices to the Lord. And it is very important for us to note too that in cases where there was no altar, that before the sacrifice could be offered, the altar, they would have to rebuild the altar, or they would have to build an altar. All right, so the altar then would be the place where man would offer to God. So God would basically meet with man to accept his sacrifice. So we are saying, based on the Old Testament, we know the altar now is not a physical altar, it's really a spiritual altar. What we need to do is to rebuild our lives so that we can rebuild our altar, if I can put it that way. Because it is our lives now that we must now, in our lives, we must now prioritize, that we are going to offer our fasting to the Lord, we're going to offer our prayer, we're going to offer our thanksgiving, we're going to offer our worship. And similarly, in the Old Testament, where there was no altar, before they could offer, they would have to build an altar, or they would have to rebuild an altar. We are saying that the enemy has ravished our altar. And we are saying we are not offering to God the kind of sacrifices that we should offer. In other words, we are not at the place where we ought to be. Very important. We understand it's not a physical altar, it's not a physical location. We understand that God is a spirit, and we honor him in spirit and in truth. All right, so it's not a physical altar, and it's not a physical place. All right, so we must also remember that the altar is a place of power for the saints. The truth is that if our altars are ravished, we will not be able to offer spiritual sacrifices to the Lord. All right, so what we want to do is to rebuild. All right, and as I said so many times, it's not physical. It is really understanding that we need to be giving to the Lord certain things. All right, and similarly in the Old Testament, where they are to have an altar, we are saying we want to offer to the Lord, we want to give to the Lord our fasting and our prayer. All right, and in order for this to be done, we need to rebuild our altars so we can offer these sacrifices unto the Lord.